I'm pointing to the direction of what I believe is the Capitol. And what needs to happen in terms of people who otherwise have evidenced themselves having a feckless quality.
If she's not drunk, I don't know what this is. Y'all let me know what you think on this one. Is Kamala Harris drunk on this one? Because listen, I want y'all to really pay close attention when you listen to this. Pay real close attention to how slurred her speech is right here.
Our extraordinary President Joe Biden. And he's going to speak in a minute, but there's a lot of love in this room for our president.
She ain't walking a straight line. Ain't no way in the world she gonna get pulled over by the police and be able to walk a straight line, folks. Guys, there's a lot we got to talk about today.
My mother she would give us a hard time sometimes, and she would say to us, I don't know what's wrong with you young people. You think you just fell out of a coconut tree? My mother used to...
Oh boy. I mean, you have to be drunk to be saying some shit like that.
The real president of this country, is it Joe Manchin or Joe Biden, Madam Vice President?
Come on, Charlamagne. It's Joe Biden.
I can't tell sometimes.
No. It's Joe Biden. It's Joe Biden. And don't start talking like a Republican about asking whether or not he's president. It's Joe Biden.
Do you think Joe Manchin is a problem?
It's Joe Biden.
She getting mad.
And I'm vice president, and my name is Kamala Harris. And the reality is, because we are in office, we do.
I feel like, as the vice president of the United States, Kamala Harris, to have to reiterate what your name is and what your role is, you have to be mentally incapacitated to some extent to feel the need to even have to reintroduce yourself, But that ain't even the worst of it.
And I just wanted to come by and say hello. You guys are the reason I do what I do. And I just love your competitive spirit. I love how you guys are just working at it. You are ready to be a team, and you're ready to compete. And I just got...
Is she drunk?
So proud. How you guys doing?
Watch her arm.
What did Kamala Harris do, you guys? Seriously, did she just show up to her rally drunk? Because that's what they're saying online, guys. Recent videos from Kamala Harris's public appearances have sparked a lot of controversy, especially with the social media users circulating claims that she was straight up intoxicated during her speeches. I mean, check this out.
Our extraordinary President Joe Biden. And he's going to speak in a minute, but there's a lot of love in this room for our president.
And that's not the only one, guys. Check out this other one.
Because when we think about the strength of our democracy, I think that there's a duality to the nature of democracy. When it's intact, it's so strong in terms of what it does to uphold and protect individual rights and freedoms. So strong in its nature, and it's very fragile. It will only be as strong as our willingness to fight.
So what do you guys think? Me, I'm just honestly surprised that people are still actually going to vote for this woman. Seriously. I mean, honestly, I heard people call her the word salad queen, and she's just been hanging out with Nancy. I mean, did you guys see those hand gestures? She could have been taking those lessons from Nancy Pelosi. And in case some other channels want to go ahead and fact check if those clips were deep fakes or something, well, they'll be disappointed because they're verified actual clips of Vice President Kamala Harris. The first one features Harris at a rally in Prince George's County, Maryland, where Harris is seen introducing President Joe Biden and discussing plans to lower prescription drug prices. The second was in Madison, Wisconsin in March. It shows her speaking about the strength of our democracy. But really, it's just kind of hard not to see, so I get why some users have been accusing her of being an alcoholic, citing these appearances as evidence of her alleged intoxication. Critics have brought this up on social media too. One user even suggested that Kamala Harris's speech patterns were akin to Vodka Pelosi. Meanwhile, another one expressed concern about her ability to perform her duties if she were indeed drinking. One comment dramatically speculated on the implications of a potentially intoxicated commander-in-chief. Honestly, you just gotta wonder whether she's really drunk, because her words are kind of slurring, aren't they? Now here's some of the comments online. John Moss says that he's an expert on being drunk, being 10 years sober, and he says drunk or maybe high, definitely not sober. The Constitutionalist confirms that, oh yeah, she's drunk. They even say this is what you call a functioning alcoholic. And last, the account MAGA says she definitely has a drinking problem. There are many videos of her being incoherent and slurring her words. They say that she can't even stop drinking when she's supposedly campaigning. So what do you guys think? Kamala Harris drunk or not drunk? Drop a comment down below. Let me know what you guys are thinking about that. And while you guys are there, go ahead and give this video a like, hit that subscribe button. That way you guys can support the channel and our mission to get this information out there. This is the kind of information that you usually don't see on mainstream media. You know what I mean, guys? All right, so let's get back to it. It's not just Kamala Harris, though. Let's not forget her running mate, Minnesota Governor Tim Waltz, who was actually arrested for drunk driving after he was pulled over for driving more than 40 miles per hour above the speed limit. Check this out as Fox News host Kayleigh McEnany talks about it with a panel, along with how Democrats are being hypocrites about the whole thing. For real.
Now, according to police records obtained by CNN, a Nebraska state trooper booked Walls speeding at 96 in a 55-mile-per-hour zone. Now, according to that police report, a strong alcoholic odor was detected from Walls's breath and person, and he failed the field sobriety test. Then he failed the preliminary breath test, and he failed the subsequent blood alcohol test when he was taken to a hospital before being booked for that DUI. But now fast forward to 2006, when Walls was running for Congress. His campaign told a very different story. His communications director told a local paper that Walls's arrest was because of hearing loss he suffered in the artillery unit of the National Guard. Quote, he couldn't understand what the trooper was telling him during the field sobriety test, and the trooper refused to speak up. Sean, what do you make of that?
So first, he admitted to being drunk in the plea hearing with the court. We have court reporters that record everything that's being said in court. So we go back to the record, and he admitted that he was drunk driving. By the way, so the legal limit back then was 0.1, and he was 0.128. But today, in most states, I think in all states, the legal limit is 0.08. So he was over 50% above the legal limit for driving. So again, I think it goes back to just Tim Walz is a liar. Whether it was a stolen valor for his military service or here what happened with the drunk driving, be honest with people. Go, you know what, I made a mistake. But here's the problem. Democrats are now saying, listen, this was so long ago, this is irrelevant. But they're going back into J.D. Vance's history, pulling up old pictures of J.D. when he was in high school. With Kavanaugh, they went back to high school and college. It's relevant, your history, when you were a young man or a young woman, when you're a Republican. But if it's Tim Walz and you're a Democrat, let's disregard it because it was, 25 years ago. Ridiculous.
Tim Waltz, 60 years old, who was 31 years old at the time, was working as a teacher in Alliance, Nebraska, was caught on police radar driving his Mazda 96 miles per hour in a 55 mile per hour zone before midnight, September 23rd, 1995. Did you hear that report from the trooper who pulled him over? A strong odor of alcoholic beverage emanating from the vehicle, according to the court documents. His blood alcohol level, according to the breath test, 0.128%, well above the state's legal limit of 0.08%. You saw his mugshot? Waltz was arrested and taken to Dawes County Jail. The following March, Waltz pleaded the charges down to reckless driving, which required him to admit that he drove a vehicle in a manner as to indicate an indifference or wanton disregard for the safety of persons or property, at least according to a court transcript. And you should hear what his lawyer said. Waltz's lawyer, Russell Harford, attempted to explain that his client was speeding because he thought the trooper was somebody chasing him, and that the officer didn't turn on his red lights, and somebody came up real fast behind him and he didn't know what they were doing. Harford reasoned that this is why Waltz had sped up to try to get away, fearing that somebody was after him. Lo and behold, it was a state patrolman that was behind him. So the faster he went, the faster the state patrol officer went. Are you guys convinced? Yeah, neither was the court. So Waltz ended up paying a $200 fine plus court costs. The judge also scolded Waltz for driving under the influence, which particularly concerned him given his position as a teacher. The judge said that this was a real problem for him to see a teacher get picked up for this kind of offense because you have to be a role model. And so now Waltz is running for the second highest position in the land. How's that for a role model? But really, what gets me is how the Democratic Party seems to be denying the whole thing. When the issue for his DUI arrest was raised during Waltz's successful 2006 2006 campaign for Congress in Minnesota, his campaign manager, Kerry Greenlee, told Rochester, Minnesota newspaper, the Post-Bulletin, that he wasn't drunk and he was unable to understand the officer's commands due to hearing loss that he incurred during his time as an artilleryman in the Army National Guard. Greenlee said that it was just a matter of Waltz not understanding what the officer was saying to him. She also claimed the judge threw out the DUI charges against Waltz and chastised the officer for not realizing he was deaf. But was any of that in the court records or the transcript? Nope. I mean, seriously, guys, you gotta wonder about these issues surrounding the Democratic presidential nominee and her running mate. But then we go into their policy proposals. Even Democratic Representative Debbie Dingell says she's not on the Kamala sugar high everyone else is. Check out this breakdown on Fox.
It just doesn't make much sense. Washington Post doesn't think so either. Here's what they said. They said, whether the Harris proposal wins over voters remains to be seen, but if sound economic analysis still matters, it won't. Jason Furman worked for Obama. This is not sensible policy. I think the biggest hope is that it ends up being a lot of rhetoric and no reality. There's no upside here, and there is some downside. The Washington Post concluded that speech on Friday ranks as a disappointment. Was that her first bad day in 28 days as the media saw it?
Look, as the media saw it, maybe I'll say that. Look, I'm not on the sugar high that everybody else has been on. I'm excited. You see new energy out there when, I've been doing these kickoffs on weekends with volunteers, and there's 2 to 3 times the number of people that have been out there. But I know it's going to be a tough election between now and November. This is Michigan, and I am out there talking to all kinds of people.
Now, of course, the Democratic National Convention, the DNC, is happening right now as I'm making this video. But while Kamala Harris is making all sorts of questionable promises, I just kind of want to focus on former President Donald Trump's counter-programming and how Senators Ron Johnson and Rick Scott basically hammered Vice President Kamala Harris on inflation and the economy. Senator Johnson from Wisconsin definitely did not mince his words when he criticized Kamala Harris's limited policy proposals, saying, you can tell right now by what very few proposals that Kamala Harris has put on the table, she doesn't have a clue. He and Senator Rick Scott from Florida stood in front of several charts at the Trump International Hotel and Tower in Chicago and used their own personal business backgrounds to talk about the rising prices on food and necessities under the current administration. They both praised Donald Trump's understanding of business, not to mention our former president's success with businesses too. Now, according to Senator Scott, Donald Trump is a business guy who understands how businesses work. That is leaps and bounds ahead of Harris, who Scott said has no earthly idea how businesses even work. Also, her vice presidential pick has no idea how businesses work either. Now, I think that pretty much sums it up, guys. In a highly capitalistic country, this is the United States. Harris and her vice presidential pick seem to be so out of touch with the way that the business world works, not to mention basic economics. In fact, the senators were quite vocal in criticizing the Biden administration for policies that they believe are facilitating inflation increases. Just last week, Harris introduced a crackdown on corporate price gouging in the food industry with a proposed federal ban, the first of its kind. Not to mention, she's also aiming to drastically expand the child tax credit, allowing up to $6,000 during a child's first year, and wants to extend prescription drug price caps to everyone rather than just the seniors. Plus, she plans to set up a $40 billion fund to assist local governments to build more housing as well as taking on landlords. Now, the question is, with the country already trillions of dollars in debt, who's going to pay for all this? As Senator Scott rebutted, her idea of having basically price controls, it's never worked anywhere. This is pure socialism. Scott says he wants a free market. He wants a bottom-up economy. He wants capitalism. And that's what Donald Trump stands for. Johnson also took a swing at Harris and her running mate, Governor Tim Walz of Minnesota, for their lack of business savviness. His exact words: it's very hard to run a successful business, and government leaders should really understand and emphasize with American entrepreneurs. Johnson compared Trump's vision of America with what Harris and Walz offer. According to under Harris, here's what's going to happen. We're going to see more inflation with her price control idea. We're going to see a lot of shortages. And take note, guys, these heavy punches were all while the Democratic National Convention was happening. So really, it's a media blitz during the DNC and a counter push happening from the Trump campaign in return for the Democrats trying to steal the show with the whole Harris switcheroo that they pulled. Trump campaign senior communication advisor Brian Hughes said that while they're at the DNC, former President Donald Trump and Senator J.D. Vance, they're doing battleground states. So it's really all hands on deck for the Republican Party. Meanwhile, Harris and Waltz, they're both still avoiding the media like the plague. And as Hughes points out, we're not hearing a lot from Kamala Harris about these policies that she's talking about. Johnson urged the media to be more demanding of Harris, even predicting Harris will not hold any press conferences ahead of Election Day if she can get away with doing so. But nope, according to Senator Johnson, the American people need to demand it. She's running for the highest office in the land. I mean, it's not talked about enough. For Democrats whose name actually has the word Democratic in it, Harris didn't go through a primary. She wasn't vetted by the American people, though that is the democratic process. She's been crowned the nominee, and now the mainstream media are just going to give her a free pass. I mean, doesn't the word Democratic mean anything anymore? Even vulnerable Democratic senators were absent from the DNC. Scott said that that's because they know she's toxic. Check the guest list for yourself, you guys. Senator John Tester, Sherrod Brown, and Jackie Rosen. According to Senator Scott, if you look at the ads that they're running, those senators act like they were their best friends with Donald Trump because they know that Harris's ideas are horrible for their state and for their families. But what's even scarier is that according to Johnson, they guarantee that if they're reelected and Harris becomes president, they will vote with her virtually 100% of the time. So yeah, you guys, all I can say right now is vote wisely. But what do you guys think? Let me know your thoughts on Harris and this video in the comments. And if you like this one, I highly recommend checking out our other video on Kamala Harris posing all sorts of crazy things, like even CNN is calling gimmicks. For real, guys, you got to check out that other one after this one. As always, thank you so much for watching. Double thanks for hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel and for sharing these videos on Facebook and Twitter. I'll see you guys on the next one.